What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you episode 6 of our full story of Divinity Original Sin. So, last episode, we explored the Luculla mines and discovered what Leandra was doing with all of these bloodstones she's been creating and collecting, which is nothing else besides forging invulnerable death knights. However, we also discovered they had a weakness, and Ikara, after learning of all of this, requested that we find out exactly what it is the Immaculates are doing in the Luculla Forest. In order to do that, we need to head to the town of Silverglyn. Last episode, I mentioned briefly that it was under the control of the Immaculates, because Leandra had come to the mining town, which was plagued by a disease called the rot, and used the bloodstones to heal several people to spread her immaculate religion. And because the bloodstones cured what they considered an incurable disease that was basically guaranteed death, they were like, holy cow, what's this all about? And jumped on board. Most people blissfully unaware that the Immaculates are basically a sort of death cult. In order to start exploring what it is they're actually doing, we can head to the Immaculate Chapel in Silverglyn and talk to the High Abbot there. I think is his actual title, but he's like a priest. His name is Loic. Now, through Loic, we can have a conversation about how to join the Immaculates, and he gives us a book called the Book of the Immaculates, I think, actually. Part 1, I think there's a total of 6 parts total, but we need to read parts 1 through 3 and answer Loic's questions to complete this part of the test. So basically, the books of the Immaculate basically explain that the Lesser Bloods, or otherwise known as the Lost Ones, you'll sometimes see the game call them, are basically the right of the people who are above them to kill them and slaughter them for their blood. So in the more trivial sense, and the way that this actually spreads through normal people, is that most people seem to think this involves like animals and stuff, the way people, will eat animals, that kind of thing, and then, just also use their blood to create bloodstones. That's the kind of gist they seem to have been going for, at least on the surface level. That seems to be how they attract people. And basically, this book explains that the blood of lesser beings is ceded to the higher beings, that kind of stuff. So it sounds about as crazy as it actually is. Just remember, these people are like low-key killing people, so there you go. Now, that said, we need to talk to Loic again after reading a couple of these. He will ask us a series of questions which require us to answer truthfully, which if you read the books, it should be super easy. There's not a lot going on there. It basically just asks about what I just mentioned. Is the lesser blood used in service of the greater blood? That kind of stuff. So it's pretty basic as long as you read the books. Then after doing so, Loic will give you his blessing, which allows us to travel up the western path of Silverglyn up to the windswept plateau area of Luculla Forest, and it's not really a forest at this point even. There is a small checkpoint of sorts along this road that is held by Immaculates, and basically what it serves as is if you talk to the guard right here, he'll actually tell you if you're high enough level to venture on, because as I mentioned 1 or 2 episodes ago, the level curve in Luculla Forest is very important. You'll get here at like level 8 or 9, and if you go straight to this, you're going to be fighting like level 14 enemies like immediately, so obviously that's a bit of a problem. So they set up this little checkpoint, and it basically serves as a you are or are not high enough level to do this right now kind of thing. So basically, as long as you've been following the stories as I've been laying them out, you'd be fine if you had gotten up to this point. This is where the Luculla Forest actually kind of separates, because we only need to go so far up this path and then see the big giant skull cave thing that Loic told us about, and that's pretty much where we need to go. However, this leaves about half of the Luculla Forest map to basically explore and just do like side quests and stuff, so I just figured I'd mention that like we're only going to explore like maybe half of this forest for the sake of the story, so just there you go. Upon entering the skull-shaped cave that I just mentioned and moving forward a little bit, we are confronted by a statue who explains that basically we're going to face a series of trials if we want to become part of the Immaculate religion. The first thing we do is head forward down an open corridor, and at the end of which all of our characters that are in the room when this happens are infected with none other than the disease called the rot. Now, we don't really need to worry about it right now. It doesn't actually do anything in this particular context that is of much concern. But after this, we can head forward to our first real trial. So the first of these trials, and we're basically confronted by a statue who sort of gives the gist of what we're supposed to do in every trial room. So for the first of these trials, really all we have to do is put the appropriate amount of weight on the couple switches that are laying around on the ground. And when you put weights on them, it will tell you a percentage of either too much or too little, and basically you're looking for a 100% sign when you do it. I think the actual weights are 1, 5, 7, and 9 kilograms total. So you can either bring something with that exact weight or play around with some of the vases and stuff and try to get it to work. But either way, you're going to have to balance these weights out in order to get some force fields down, and that's how you do that particular trial. And the next trial is actually even easier than that. You just have to play around with some levers until you get the right combination and hit the one in the middle of the room. And if you did it right, the door will unlock. If you did it wrong, you're attacked by a singular mob. That'll happen, and then the next room is actually less of a trial and more of a conversation. So there will be a star stone in the middle of the next room. We can walk up to it and, using our ability to absorb star stones, do exactly that, and then we can explore the room a little more and then find Loic. Now alternatively, you can skip around the star stone and then go speak to Loic as well. But ultimately the result will be the same, because Loic presents the Starstone and tries to get you to kill a chicken to power up the Starstone into a Bloodstone and then heal you of the rot. However, if you already approach the Starstone, your, again, ability to absorb the powers from Starstones will have done that beforehand, and he will notice that and then rush off. Alternatively, he presents the Starstone and then the same thing happens, so regardless, this is going to happen. So Loic, upon realizing that you've absorbed this power from the Starstone, runs off and then comes back with several Immaculate enemies that we then have to fight and kill for our very survival. So once this is done and we kill Loic and get his key to the church, which is what we need to move forward, and your character should say something about it when you pick it up. We need this particular key to go back to the Immaculate Church in Silverglen and use the hatch in the corner of the room that you probably noticed before. Now this takes us down to Loic's personal chambers, where we find a portal and 2 bloodstones. So pick up the 2 bloodstones. You're just going to use those to unlock rooms in your homestead, because, you know, we unlock a room every time we use them, as up to this point we have done many times. And more than likely, this will also trigger a piece of the Source Hunter's history to also fall into place, which if you've been following the series, you'll know what I'm talking about. And we will get to those towards the end of the video. For now, we're just going to carry on uninterrupted. So, if we use the portal that we find in Loic's chambers, we get taken to an area of Luculla Forest known as Sacred Stone. And in order to, from here, find out what the Immaculates have been doing, we need to basically hunt out their leader in probably what they would consider the most sacred place around. So we can explore the actual town of Sacred Stone a little bit. If you have Bear Daughter with you, which is one of the companions, this is where her companion story will reach its conclusion, by the way. We don't, and I'm not really covering those in this particular walkthrough, so we're going to carry on. Now, the village of Sacred Stone has a few things you can do, but honestly, it's not really what we're focused on. What we need to do is go to the west of Sacred Stone to a path that is blocked by noxious bulb traps, and we need to navigate this path all the way down to the end of it, where we will run into some orcs holding a bunch of people prisoner. They will attack us immediately, and then we kill them. And then after that is done, we can talk to the guards at the door slightly to the north. These guys, if you have an enlightened amulet with you, which you should have gotten one from killing Loic or a couple other people, honestly, up to this point. However, if you have the enlightened amulet on you and you didn't, like, say, sell it or something, you can just pass right by these guys, like, completely unbothered. Otherwise, they'll fight you. So once we get inside the temple, we need to light the 4 braziers that are around, which will unlock a path into the actual proper church. From here, once we get to the altar, we are confronted by a man named Mangoth, who seems to be the leader of the Immaculates right under Leandra herself. Mangoth explains basically his feelings, but doesn't actually reveal anything we don't really already know up to this point. So he summons a bunch of demons. We have to fight all of the demons, well, the 2 demons he summons, and also some followers of his. And then he disappears. Now, we actually need to find him, and if you go up to the second story, you can speak to a ghostly woman called the Librarian, who basically seems annoyed with the Immaculate's presence, but it's not like she can do much about it. She explains that Mangoth probably went under the altar somewhere, because she sees them going in and out of there. And if you look around the room behind some of the pillars, you can find a lever that will actually move the giant stone altar in the middle of the room. Now once you go down here, there will be another slight puzzle to solve. In one of the books in the room, it will actually tell you the order of the switches you need to press that are around this. There's 4 switches in the room basically, and one of the books will tell you the order that you need to press them in, which is like basically just counterclockwise, really. So once you press all 4 switches, the room in the center of the room pops open, and once you go to enter it, Mangoth will then show up again, and this time he will attack you directly instead of running away, and you are forced to kill him. Now once that is done, you will be able to read the diary in the room that just opened up, which is Leandra's diary, in which she explains that basically the Immaculates are supposed to disband if she dies, because in her goal to bring about the Void, she believes that she's the only one that can do it, and basically without her, if she dies for any reason, she wants the Immaculates to disband. Makes that very clear. However, we are not done just yet. If we use the hatch behind the altar or the podium where we just picked up the diary, we can go down into what seems to be a second hiding place for Leandra in the Luculla Forest. So once we move about this area, we can read a couple of her books which explain her side of things and how basically that she is, trying to do what she's told us she's doing up to this point, which is to bring the Void. It just gives us a little more context into that and what she's planning on doing. When basically what she's planning on doing is ambushing Astarte, the goddess of Source, as we learned from the last episode, with not just the Void Dragon, but also other forces that will make it basically impossible for Astarte to win. Because what we didn't know up to this point is that the reason Astarte has been kind of flitting in and out of our view is because she has actually been fighting the Void Dragon since it was unleashed from the God Box, which we also learned last episode or the episode before, I don't remember exactly which, but we learned that the Void Dragon was released from the God Box it was imprisoned in, and Astarte actually fought it. So we can learn all of that, and lastly we can pick up a vial of Leandra's blood. Now if we go back and talk to Akara, because we basically also find one last thing in this room I just forgot to mention, is that she is headed for the Source Temple in the Phantom Forest, which is a slightly deeper part of the forest, and she is trying to find Zandalore because Zandalore is a keeper of the Source. Basically, Zandalore is part of an order that takes the Source very seriously, as you might imagine. And for whatever reason, Leandra needs Zandalore present for something at the Source Temple so she can bring the Void Dragon closer finally, and then finish her plans. So we know what Leandra is doing next, which is heading for the Source Temple in the Phantom Forest. So we can bring all of this information back to Akara, who obviously requests us to go to the Phantom Forest and put a stop to this, which brings an end to the Luculla Forest portion of our walkthrough, which brings us to the last third, basically, of the game, which will be a little shorter, probably 2 or 3 parts. But before we get ahead of ourselves, we also found that vial of Leandra's blood that I mentioned just a little bit ago. So we can combine this with the Leandra's spell that we found in the mines from the previous episode, and if we craft these 2 things together, we can make a Death Knight vulnerability spell, which removes their invulnerable status. And once we make this book, we can actually use it to teach all of our characters this skill. It is not consumed on use. From this, we will have gained a way to harm the previously invulnerable Death Knights, which will assuredly have probably caused a death or 2 on your part. And with that, we have our next goal for our next episode, which is entering the Phantom Forest and seeing what we can do to find Zandalore in the Source Temple. And Akara gives us the perfect place to start because it turns out that Zandalore has a house in a town nearby the Phantom Forest known as Hunter's Edge, and she suggests that we go to Zandalore's house first to discover where he might be or how to get a hold of him, basically. So that brings us to the last part of this particular video, which is showing you guys the cinematics that we'll have unlocked from all the bloodstones we collected throughout the Luculla Forest. This first cinematic, which you'll be watching right about now.
For millennia, the God Box was flanked by the 2 devoted guardians. But Astarte's playmate, a creature called the Trife, turned her attention to the forbidden box. I may know a way to destroy what's inside, hissed the scheming creature. Together, we can set the Guardians free. Open its lid, Astarte, and we can have a look together. Astarte trusted her friend and assented. She pitied the Guardians and welcomed a chance to free them. Let me help you, she whispered into the ear of one. I know your duty, but you both deserve a chance at freedom. Haven't you suffered enough of this chore? She asked the other. Look, your companion is free already. The Guardians, unaccustomed to such attention, started. She had planted a seed of curiosity within them, rekindled a desire that had, for eons, lain dormant. Slowly, they glanced at one another, and the Trife's trap was sprung.
Shows how the demon known as, well, the Voidwoken rather, known as the Trife, tricked Astarte in the first garden after the God Box was placed there into persuading the Guardians, the two Source Hunters we're playing now, into leaving so she could potentially see what was in the God Box. So that is the first cinematic, and we will likely have gotten enough Bloodstones and Starstones gathered up to immediately unlock a second cinematic, which actually explains what happens after that.
With the Guardians distracted, Astarte lifted the lid of the God Box. What she saw was nothingness. Astarte had called forth the Void Dragon, whose sole purpose was to undo all creation. Caught off guard and terrified, the Guardians, sworn protectors, fled. But Astarte stood firm. She grabbed hold of the dragon and hurled it and herself into the reaches of the void. Here she battled the dragon for all eternity. For his deception, the Trife was cast out of the first creation. He fell to Rivellon, a monstrous creature unworthy of the realm of the gods. Since that terrible day, Source has been tainted by the presence of the Void. A once beautiful power has become corrupted, and those attempting to wield it often go mad in the process.
And of course, this second cinematic showing that Astarte has been battling the Void Dragon for quite some time, basically forever, almost, since the Trife convinced the Source Hunters to abandon their duty, well, tricked Astarte into convincing them to abandon their duty. And Astarte opens the God Box, the Void Dragon is then unleashed, and being caught unaware, the Guardians, the two Source Hunters were playing in a previous life, so to speak, just vanished. They dipped out. Astarte has been battling the Void Dragon, keeping it at bay ever since, but lately has been unable to continue to do so for the reasons of Liandra killing all these people and everything and powering up all these Bloodstones and using them to call the Void Dragon closer. There is all of that information for you guys. That is going to do it for part 6 of Divinity Original Sin, the story of. So, our next episode, again, we will be entering the Phantom Forest and beginning our search for Zandalore so we can see the Source Temple and basically try to see what Liandra specifically is trying to do there. Now, with that in mind, guys, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you guys. If you'd like, comment, subscribe, do all that YouTube stuff, I'd certainly appreciate it. It definitely helps the channel grow. But even if you don't, you guys are a legend. Thank you for watching. Have an amazing day.